Welcome to the Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership Podcast. Subscribe now so you don't miss a drop of straight talk you can't get anywhere else. We discuss the whiskeys to drink, music to listen to, and what it really takes to be an effective leader. I'm your host, Galen Bingham, the leadership strategist. Tonight's guest, entrepreneur, diplomat, author, and owner of Stoneledge Spirits Company, Mark Sutherland. Hey, what you drinking? Wow. I mean, talk about a long-term vision. You've got to have sincere conviction for what it is that you're trying to accomplish. I'm sure there's been more than a couple of moments when you've made the investment and you thought to yourself, shouldn't I be doing something? Couldn't I do something else to make money? Because this thing has got 5 years before I can even see if I've got a good product. Talk about those moments when you're wondering if maybe you had too strong of a whiskey over there in London.
Yeah, no, I mean, we got the advantage. So our distiller is absolutely fantastic. He's been doing it for, oh gosh, since he was about 3. And he learned it from his grandfather. The recipe we use is actually a recipe that was in our distiller's family since at least 1761.
Yeah.
The yeast that he uses was brought over to the Americas from Scandinavia around that same time as well. So he has a long history. So we can get 2 months in and he's tasting out of the barrel and he knows, is this on track? One of the keys to our success here is putting the right people in the right roles and building the right team in what we do. We would not have anything to offer if it wasn't for our distiller. I may be out there, selling and promoting and doing all the paperwork and the regulatory. It doesn't matter if I don't have the right distiller in there. And then if it was just the distiller, then you wouldn't have your sales guys. So it's building that team. But luckily, we don't have to wait 4 years to know if we've got a good product. We know on the way. And you have those touch points and those check-ins, every few months, just a quick taste. Are we on track? Is this over oaking? Is this going where we want it to go? And he's been doing it for a long time. So we've got that experience that we're able to pull on, even though we are a newer company. He's not new to this.
Yeah. Yeah. You talked about how sometimes things just work out. Have you come across any pleasant surprises, things that, boy, I didn't plan on this happening, but I'm certainly glad that it did. I'm sure running into the rum in London was probably one of them, but anything else that, boy, I'm so glad that this thing happened, although it wasn't part of the plan.
Pretty much every moment. I mean, that happens a lot. I mean, one of the most incredible things that I've discovered in growing this is people I've never met before try our whiskey, fall in love with our whiskey, and become, with nothing to gain for them, they become our biggest ambassadors. They become our biggest fans, or they invest, and they're just passionate about what we're building, even though we've never had a connection before. And then also the things that just kind of link up together. Just by chance, I reached out to a friend in Florida who knew a potential investor in the UK. Just by chance, they were just getting into whiskey. Just by chance, they also had a store in London where they sell fine wine, but they wanted to expand to whiskey. So then my goal of eventually expanding and exporting to the UK, well, now that happened because I just happened to reach out to one guy in Florida who knew another guy. It wouldn't be happening otherwise. If that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have been over and picking up this rum, and I wouldn't have product that they can then take into the UK, and they wouldn't have product. So all these different things happen from that one chance outreach. You see that happen all the time. And, just those two things are just probably the coolest thing about this journey that we're on.
And just to carry on with your theme, one of the things that I have taken to doing at the end of every guest that I get a chance to talk to is I will ask them, you've been through the process, you understand what we're trying to do here on Whiskey Jazz and Leadership. Who else do you know that needs to be part of this conversation? And just so happened, I was introduced to someone who introduced me to Scott Heathman. And
Uh-huh.
when I had such a great conversation with Scott, if you guys are listening to this and you don't remember or you don't know who Scott, please double back and check out that conversation. Just really, really rich with all kinds of leadership gems. But when we finished, I asked, "Who else do I need to talk to?" And he said, "Oh, well, you haven't talked to Mark yet. Let me set that up. Let me have that conversation, connect you to." And I am so glad that he did. Talk a little bit about what was the connection to Scott? Why did Scott get so interested in this whiskey that you're developing, this idea that you've brought to Missouri?
A chance encounter. So Scott, at the time we met, he was the commander at Scott Air Force Base, the wing commander. And a friend of a friend had just stepped off they have their honorary wing commander program or honorary commander program at Scott Air Force Base, where community influencers from the surrounding area get to, for 2 to 3 years, kind of embed themselves in Scott Air Force Base and
Mm.
experience what our heroes in uniform do every single day. And so a friend of a friend nominated my friend to be part of the program. Now, he couldn't do it. So he nominated me. So just by chance, I was nominated. I was assigned as the honorary wing commander. So Scott was my connection point, and we just hit it off. He's a fantastic guy, incredibly relatable, just a born leader. I watched how he led his team at Scott, and we became fast friends. And when the whiskey was ready to go, I introduced him to the whiskey, and he fell in love with the whiskey and started bragging about the whiskey, and really, really enjoyed it. And so that's kind of where our relationship started. And it's just, he retired, and we're still connected and still highly respect each other and enjoy each other's company. And we've spent time at the wineries together, and just, yeah, fantastic, fantastic guy. But again, it was just taking advantage of a chance opportunity, and
Yeah.
it turned into some incredible things.
I'm sensing a theme, and it's reminding me of
Like, I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm just kind of stumbling around in
no, no,
opportunities.
you are really when we talk about jazz, you're really playing off of what's in the room. And because you are skilled at what you do, you're skilled at creating relationships, you just have a bunch of friends. And it
Mhm.
reminds me of one of the first business principles I ever learned. And this is from Mark McCormick, who is the author of What They Didn't Teach You at Harvard, What They Didn't Teach Me at Harvard Business School. And I am sure that that book is full of amazing information. But the one thing that I've remembered in the 35, I don't know, 40 years since I first read it, he says, all things being equal, friends buy from friends. All things being slightly unequal, friends buy from friends. And so for me, the moral of that story and the moral of what I'm hearing from you is make friends.
And even if they don't buy from you, you've got friends.
You've got a friend. The consolation is you got a friend.
Exactly. There's no losing here.
You might be able to share a whiskey, or cigar with them, at
Exactly.
some point. So talk a little bit about, I kind of chuckled when I saw kind of your jazz favorites, not because you cite Miles Davis as being one of your favorite musicians, because Miles Davis is by far and away my favorite musician of all time. But your introduction to Miles Davis is not usually how people get
Yeah.
introduced to Miles Davis. Can you talk about the connection to Miles Davis, Billy Madison, and Adam Sandler?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not a jazz aficionado. I enjoy it, but I got to the question. I'm like, who do I actually know jazz artists, or do I just know the music? I'm like, well, I know the one guy, Miles Davis, because the whole scene in Billy Madison where the kid is peeing his pants, and the old lady's like, well, if peeing your pants is cool, then I'm Miles Davis. I'm like, I need to find who Miles Davis is. And so that was my introduction to jazz musicians. So yeah, that was so that's my the most memorable jazz musician that I know of, thanks to Adam Sandler and Billy Madison.
That was a great scene. I had to go check it out just to figure out Billy Madison. I remember the movie, but I don't know that I remembered that scene. But oh my gosh, that gave me a little insight into your humor, personality. How much humor and personality goes into not only creating a whiskey, but running a distillery?
I mean, I think it's anytime you need humor to stay sane when you're building anything, not necessarily just distillery or anything to do with spirits. Humor is kind of the way to relax and to reconnect with reality because we
Mhm.
can get so serious and we're so mission driven. And really, at the end of the day, you just want to enjoy life and enjoy the people around you. Humor is a big part of that. I appreciate, my natural humor is, of course, Monty Python style,
Of course.
very dry British humor. I enjoy that immensely. But yeah, I mean, and I'm terrible at dad jokes. I've never quite figured out dad jokes, but I think humor is essential, especially self-deprecating humor. It's and British people are very good at self-deprecating humor. And I think it keeps you humble. It means you don't have to rely on somebody else to keep you humble. But yeah, I do enjoy a good humor and definitely British in my flavor.
Yeah, yeah. Now talk a little bit about I mean, you've traveled, you lived all over the world. You don't sound like a Missourian. Talk a little bit about the transition to living in the United States after having been in London, having lived in Scotland. So what's that transition been like for you?
I mean, for me, I think it was a phenomenal transition. I grew up, poor, Southern England, lower income, had no idea what the future held, no idea what opportunities there might be, never envisioned really doing anything cool at a warehouse or, maybe join the military, which actually that's pretty cool. But never, those were kind of the only options that were ahead of me. And I come to America and all of a sudden everybody likes the way I talk. Everybody was welcoming. Everybody was friendly. There was no class. So there was no restrictions based upon where you were born in society. And Britain's moved away from that in the last 30 years. But when I was a kid, it was very much still a class system in the UK. Really didn't know any entrepreneurs and came here and met people that came from the UK and were running their own companies
Hmm.
and were highly successful and were building an American dream. And it opened my eyes that in this country, the sky's the limit. If you want to work hard and get ahead and build something and prepare yourself for that, you can. That was a mindset shift for me as a teenager to then be able to realize I can do whatever I want to do within reason. I'm never going to be a baseball player, even though I tried at 14. Gave that up after 1 year because I was terrible at it. Basketball, I was encouraged to do, but being 6'5" is not the only requirement when it comes to playing basketball.
There's a few other things.
Yeah, like actually playing basketball before you come to America. So there's limits to that, but the opportunities that this country gives people that they want to embrace is absolutely phenomenal. So I think it was a fantastic transition for me. Really opened my eyes and just the welcoming, open attitude of the people in Missouri and in St. Louis was at the time mind blowing, and it's still a key part of the culture here.
Yeah, once St. Louis embraces you as one of theirs, you're in,
Mhm.
and you get connections to all kinds of people. St. Louis has got this spirit where one of the first things they want to know is where'd you go to school,
Right.
and by where'd you go to school, they want to know where'd you go to high school. And I've often said, hey, look, I've been here for almost 20 years, but I didn't go to high school here. So will you let me in? Can I be part of the club? They're like, well, you didn't go to high school here, so I guess they're gonna have to let me in. If they're gonna let you in
That's
from
right.
overseas, they gotta let me in. Although I can't claim my high school.
Yeah, no, I enjoy that. I mean, occasionally you want to make something up, just see how they react. But no, yeah, that is definitely part of the culture. They want to figure you out, so they know what they're dealing with. It's kind of like in the UK, you kind of figure out where people are from in the
Yeah.
UK. That tells you a little bit about them, gives you some common jokes. You realize who can you make fun of together, things like that.
Well, I always, as far as getting to know you a little better, I always like to ask my question about your invisible board of directors. Talk a little bit about, because some of the members of your invisible board make sense knowing your background, right? Knowing your heritage, they make a lot of sense. Talk a little bit about who's on your invisible board and why. What are the things that they contribute on your board? Because my personal board, they're an active board, boy. I put them to work. So, what kind
Yeah.
of work does your board
Well,
help
I think
you?
I think my chairman is Jesus for sure.
Not a bad chairman. Not
Not
a
a bad
bad chairman.
chairman. He kind of knows everything. He wrote a really cool book that has a lot of answers. And keeps you on track. It's make sure that your moral center is there, and also keeps your perspective right. You don't think too much of yourself. As a Christian, I know my failings. I know where I fall way short. I know that God makes that up for me. So that keeps me humble and on track, and grounded. And then, of course, a couple of Brits on the board. So Winston Churchill, natural leader, failed numerous times, kept coming back, kept reinventing himself. I think he switched political parties like 17 times. He was the right man for the right time, and just had to make really hard decisions that impacted a lot of people, but used wisdom and humor to do that. So I learned a lot from Winston Churchill's life. I also have the honor of being a Churchill Fellow at the Winston Churchill
Oh,
Museum here in
wow.
in Missouri.
Let's talk a little bit about Winston Churchill, and this is
Yeah.
just from my perspective, which is, illfully unprepared and unresearched. But Winston Churchill, for me, he's always been almost like the British version of Abraham Lincoln, where the perfect leader for the time, to your point, couldn't imagine the decisions and the things that he had to navigate through during those times, but somehow the world survived because he made some pretty okay decisions. And the legend of Winston Churchill has grown so much that I even wonder if all the things that we say that Winston Churchill did, if he actually did, because the legend has loomed so large. Same thing with Abraham Lincoln. Great leader for the time. Can't imagine trying to make some of the decisions that he had to make. Things seem to have worked out. We've survived. But the legend of Abraham Lincoln, it's nowhere near what the real Abraham Lincoln could have been like. How founded is that from a Brit's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think this thing's a very valid perspective. I mean, Winston Churchill had the ability to see what was coming. He was one of the only ones that did. He saw the rise of Nazi Germany, saw the dangers it presented, saw the Soviet Union coming. Even though he was forced to work with Stalin during World War II, but he knew there was danger on the horizon there as well. So he saw a lot of coming, but he was also a man who had a lot of self-doubt, and had a lot of flaws. Well, I know whiskey and cigars, that's really not a flaw.
It's
Yes,
hard to mess that up. It's
that's
hard to
right. I
mess it
mean,
up.
yeah, he woke up drinking whiskey, I think, and every morning. So there's a lot you can learn from him. He was the one guy standing up, shouting, saying, you guys need to pay attention. This is what's really happening. And everybody ignored him until they realized it was true, and then they asked him to come in and lead. And then during that leadership, I think he grew on a lot of people.
Mm.
It's no longer the bombastic flamethrower, the roof is flat falling, the sky is falling kind of attitude. He proved himself out. With that said, 1945, after the war was over, the next election kind of got relaxed, and the British people decided we want something different. Put him out of office. He just won World War II, and you're done. Bye bye. So 1946, he's like, the Soviet Union's an issue. I've been saying this for a while. I need to get the world to pay attention. Ended up in Fulton, Missouri, giving the Iron Curtain speech. And there's a whole story behind that. It's absolutely fantastic. But gave that speech, got reelected to be prime minister again in the United Kingdom, and was able to really raise the awareness of the world to the oncoming threat of the Soviet Union. And he was, proven true. And then eventually, with the Berlin Wall falling, we had peace for a while.
Mm.
But yeah, his example of a flawed, failing man who overcame self-doubt and failure to really have a huge impact on the world. Yeah, that's his legacy, and it's all true.
Fantastic. Well, take me through the rest of your board because I got to get you into the VIP room, man.
That sounds good.
The VIPs are hearing about this whiskey that I'm sipping on, and they're wanting some for themselves. So, take me through the rest of your board.
Yeah, so Queen Elizabeth, I highly respected her for her entire life. In fact, my mom, who's in her 70s, that was her queen for the entire time that Queen Elizabeth was alive, and now we have King Charles. But just that steady, non-controversial, just getting things done, working hard, serving, preferring others, but providing advice without forcing advice. Just that whole
Mm.
attitude that she had of, however long I live, whether it
Yeah.
be short or long, I'm going to live it in service to you, the British people. That speaks volumes about who she is, and I think she probably has some sage advice.
Yeah.
She advised Winston Churchill and every prime minister since, up till Liz Truss, who was one prime minister ago. So yeah, good experience there. And then the last one's Trump. Not getting political, but I love his pull no punches approach.
Hmm.
I love the fact that he just keeps pushing and keeps building. But then I also know people that know him, and they speak of how kind he is and how generous he is behind the scenes. And just, I think that perspective, a highly successful businessman who people who know him like him a lot,
Hmm.
you would have a lot of advice to give that would be good.
Wow. Okay. Interesting mix. Interesting mix. Uh,
That's a key to a board.
yeah.
Well, you don't want everybody the same. You want that variety of perspective.
Yeah. You hear the VIPs banging on the walls. I gotta get you in there. Oh, okay. All right. All right. Okay, fine. VIPs, we're coming. We're coming. Man, I have just so enjoyed the conversation, but I'm going to tell you, this is the second best thing that's happened to me all day is this conversation. The single best thing has got to be when this 6'5" Brit showed up at my door and said, "Hey, you've never tasted this before, but if we're going to have a conversation about whiskey, you got to taste the juice that I'm making. This is absolutely amazing. I've seen this in a couple of places, but now I think I'm gonna need to have some backup, man. I think you've sold a couple more bottles in the trade
Right.
because of this. It's absolutely amazing. What final thoughts do you have to share with the audience on this side of the velvet rope? And how can people get a hold of you if they want to learn more about Stolac whiskey? Because this is probably one of my more I'm gonna say this is my favorite whiskey outside of Kentucky. I've got a couple of Kentucky whiskeys that just have held a place in my heart. But man, this is some really good stuff, man.
I like it. I mean, you asked the question, what else would I want to share? I mean, the biggest thing, and I think if I look back at my life and my time in America, is be the person that's going to invest in somebody else.
Mm,
If I look back at I told you the stories of the opportunities and the happenstance. None of that would have happened if people hadn't taken the time to invest in me
mm,
as a young man, as an entrepreneur, sacrificing their own time in order to help me with no benefit to them whatsoever. And I think that's an important thing that we all need to be doing for everybody around us at all times. And then, relax. At the end of the day, relax. Have a good glass of whiskey, preferably mine, but enjoy it and do it with people that you love.
I love it, man. Well, with that, raise your Stolock single barrel. I see you dropped a cube in that one, man. I might have to try that one. I might have to try a cube, but man, this is really too good to be 119. This is amazing. And if you are listening to this and you are not a VIP, you're going to miss out. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. For less than a Starbucks a month, you get to hear this additional conversation that we're going to have. You get access to additional resources. Okay, VIPs, I'm coming. Man, raise your glass and thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you so much for this education. But thank you so much for this incredibly, incredibly smooth bottle of single barrel reserve.
You are most welcome.
Cheers. Hey, it's not too late. Hit that subscribe button so you're sure to catch the next episode. If you're really enjoying the vibe, leave us a review or become a VIP for guest and show exclusives. Cheers.